Peace, family. Y'all know who it is. It's Dr. Bakari K. Lumumba of LumumbaSpeaks.com. In conjunction, once again, with Bequaline Network, the Pan African social media extraordinaire, the home of African Center news and information. Back with a great show for you all. Make sure that you like, subscribe, share, and donate via Cash App, Venmo, and of course the Super Chat. And so this show is going to be really based on a question that was asked to me. I did a show probably last week, and a person asked the question, "Why are you an atheist?" And so I said, "Okay, we can have this conversation online." Particularly because, of course, it was asked of me. This is not something I typically discuss or make people aware of. Okay, make people aware of on my own. But I said, okay, since I was asked the question, of course, we would do a show about it. So once again, if you're watching, make sure you hit the like, subscribe, share. Make sure you hit that notification bell. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. You're watching Lumumba Speaks in conjunction, of course, with Bequaline Network. As you all know, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire in the home of African-centered news and information. And so we're tapping right in. Got the headphones on, just came from the gym, had a great workout, great lift, great pump. Happy Pan-African Thursday to everyone, right? Last day of April. And then, of course, we're moving into May, which, of course, is a rather important month in terms of the history of African people. We know Kwame Nkrumah created, of course, African Liberation Day. We have, of course, Malcolm X birthday coming up as well. If I can remember correctly, I think Joe Louis is born in the month of May, and a number of other luminaries in terms of the African community. If I could look rather quickly right in my calendar, in terms of end of history and, of course, the month. So tomorrow will be Workers' Day in South Africa. And, of course, Gwendolyn Brooks, who became the first African-American woman to win a Pulitzer Prize for her book, Poetry, was born on May 1st. So definitely want to make sure we give a shout out to Gwendolyn Brooks and make sure that you all are on the lookout for, of course, our daily Black History facts. So we're going to get started. Once again, family, the link is in the description. I believe the link will be in the chat momentarily. Take care of that right now. So we're going to have this conversation. And then, of course, we will move forward regarding if you all have any questions, insights, etc. So why I became an atheist. So first and foremost, I think it's important that we kind of, preface this conversation by stating I never had an traumatic personal experience with religion or any religious institutions. For many people, they may come to that based on something that's happened in their life that was traumatic. That wasn't the case for me. I grew up in the church. My parents are preachers. Church of God in Christ, so Christian Church of God in Christ, Kojic, Pentecostal, Holy Roller. Lord, I'm running, trying to make 199 and a half won't do. We're talking about speaking in tongues. We're talking about shouting. Of course, there's the belief that when one receives the Holy Ghost, it'll be with the evidence of speaking in tongues. That is an aspect of the Pentecostal, of course, denomination. Other denominations of Christianity argue that having the Holy Ghost simply means that you now engage in the fruits of the Spirit, right? So this is Christian theology here. Just want to make you all aware of that. But never adverse, of course, experience, of course, but however, oftentimes I would ask questions as a child. I'm an African American. Why are we learning about Jewish people, etc., etc., etc.? And those questions weren't able to be answered, or if they were answered, they weren't answered in the manner that I believe was sufficient. So, of course, I think a lot of people, when you grow up, you in this house and you begin to focus and develop your own worldview, what as an academy called self-authorship. And what ended up transpiring and taking place was went to college and I began to learn about world religions. Many people would know that I'm minored in religion. So I began to learn about world religions, particularly African religions. Became aware, of course, how African people came in contact, particularly Abrahamic faiths. And then later on in my academic journey, I learned about these Abrahamic faiths having a long and virulent history of anti-Black racism from their inception. The typically multifaceted form of anti-Blackness that these Abrahamic religions practice. And so I didn't want to make a lateral move from, of course, Christianity to Islam or Judaism, simply repudiated all three. I do identify politically That's the Rastafarian. Politically, not of course religiously. Many people may be unaware that there are two branches of Rastafari. One is a religious branch, where many people would argue they're simply, of course, Afrocentric Christians, and then there's the political branch. As many people where I'm an atheist, there are Rastafarians who are atheists. A great example of that, one of the preeminent Rastafarians that is an atheist, would be Mudabuga, right? And many people, if you are unaware who Mudabuga is, I would say just do a Google search of him and you will find out that he is him, not them. Um, so as a result, uh, focus on the political aspect. Because I remember somebody even tried to call me out on that when I was an undergraduate student. And I said, well, no, this is the situation, broke that down. But the major reason why I'm an atheist is I simply don't see the utility in practicing a religion or believing in God. I just don't see the utility. I think oftentimes when individuals are seeking to proselytize, particularly if it's an Abrahamic religion, particularly Christianity, but sometimes with Islam, we tend to find the question being, well, what are you going to do if you have a problem, right? And so I would argue that that question presumes that one lacks agency, one lacks the ability to be self-determining, so one can't act upon oneself, and it really promotes a self-loathing type of, it's deferential type of uh, mindset, a mantra that, of course, I just can't find myself aligning with. Call, I was working on the job, and I was asked a question, well, how do you think the world was created? And I said, but to be quite honest with you, I don't care. But what I do know is that there are all cultures have creation stories, and that for many of us, the only creation story that we are aware of derives from someone else's culture, not our own. And of course, that's an example of miseducation. But the crux of the issue for me is, and of course, Barbara Crow would always say, I'm not into spookism when I begin to parrot that narrative. But for me, I don't see the utility in believing in God or practicing a religion. So that's why I can argue I became an atheist. I just don't see the utility in such a belief. So very short and sweet, family. You all could tap in, be part of the combo. Definitely would like to hear from you all. Maybe you all have some insights that I may have overlooked, and maybe you all have some questions for me. So definitely, you can tap in, be part of the conversation. Once again, as many of you all aware, if you want to be part of the combo, you do not have to cam up in any shape or form. You can use a pseudonym to protect your identity. I understand that 100%, but tap in, be part of the conversation. Would love to hear from you all regarding this conversation. Once again, I did this show because someone asked me, right, on a live. They asked a question. I said, I could do a show about it. But long story short, I always had questions as a child. And of course, when you're growing up in a religious institution, the questions, when you ask a question, they're answering the question in a manner that I believe typically is disingenuous, because there's a belief, there's a focus of getting one to do what? Actually believe. And typically, there's not even a concern if you even know what you actually believe. It's just being a believer is what is most important. I also found that many of the individuals were, I was argue, undereducated, right? They oftentimes spoke about issues that they had no knowledge of, simply because of their belief in, of course, the Christian God. A level of religious chauvinism that I was a bit disenchanted by. It really turned me off, and particularly when I went to college and found that these individuals literally were speaking about issues that they had no knowledge of, and of course, misinforming people, promoting misinformation, then really having an extremely simplistic understanding of the world and how it works, right? And I kind of went over that when I wrote my article regarding my experience in Central Florida at the church I went to, First Antioch Missionary Baptist Church, and where the pastor had an extremely simplistic understanding of the world and argued if people were just Christians, then these problems will be solved. The simplistic promotion of Christian nationalism, when the reality of the situation, this is coming down to power. This is about resources, access to resources, and this of course completely went over his head. So once again, family, tap in, be part of the conversation. Love to hear from you all. If you have any questions for me, if you can't tap into the live, you can of course put the questions in the chat. But we're just doing a brief show this evening on why I became an atheist. Of course, this is something that was asked of me by one of my subscribers, and so just thought it would be great to disseminate my reasoning. Of course, I'm not someone who seeks to proselytize or promote my religious or non-religious beliefs on anyone, but I thought this would be a great way of having that conversation in an open forum in real time. And of course, I expect there may be some pushback, but once again, for me, the crux of the issue is I don't see the utility right, in practicing a religion or believing in a God. For many people, they would argue that gives them a value system. I have a strong value system independent of religion. Of course, being a Pan Africanist, and of course, we talk about Nguzu Saba, the seven principles of Kwanzaa. Many people argue, well, it helps me become to be disciplined, and so on and so forth. I said, but I'm able to be disciplined independent of that. So I know for some people, it may be needed or necessary to provide some structure or moral code in their life, but that's not something that I needed. That's something I was able to develop on my own. So once again, family, tap in. The link is in the description. The link is in the chat. If you have any questions, right, regarding my position, I definitely would love to hear from you all. If the billions upon billions of people that believe that there is a God, why do you think you're right and they're wrong? Well, it's not even an issue of if I think I'm right or wrong. The reality of the situation is I'm speaking from the field of anthropology. So if anyone is familiar with the academic field of anthropology, it's the study of humanity, right? What we find, and this is the consensus in the discipline, is that religion was created as a way to answer questions that human beings did not have answers to. Is there a higher power? How was the world created? What happens when you die? Etc. What is the purpose of life? So the consensus in the academy that religion was created by human beings to answer questions that they did not have the answers to. So it's not an issue of me believing I'm right and wrong. I just look at it from an academic frame of reference. So any other questions, family? Definitely, you can tap in. You can put a question in the chat. And of course, I think I need to mention this. I also am aware that in traditional African societies, traditional African culture, there's no concept of being an atheist or agnostic. Everyone believed, of course, in the divine. Um, However, this is an aspect of my life that one would argue is not African centered. I know for many, particularly in the Black conscious community, they came to atheism by way of Marxism. Right, I was unaware until I did a little research on Marxism. But Marxism promotes this concept of atheism, but I was completely unaware that I came to atheism organically, not because I was subscribing to a particular ideology or paradigm or construct of any kind, uh, shape, or form. So my position, I developed this organically, and I just did not see the utility in it. In fact, I was having a conversation. Someone said, we're praying for you that you would get this work for you. And I said, well, here's the issue. I said, if you're praying and the prayers, if you believe the prayer is answered, then of course that erases my capacity of having agency in the situation. So then that I oftentimes can be seen as disrespectful. So one could argue that some folks believe in God due to society peer pressure and fear of feeling as a misfit. That is possible as well. Absolutely. So they're right. There are a number of course, perspectives and variables, but I was simply speaking from an anthropological frame of reference. But particularly today, absolutely, we find that tends to be the case, right? Absolutely. Where I always argue for a lot of people, it's called hell insurance. I'm just going to believe in this and follow this just in case, right? I'm in that lake of fire. So definitely understand you there. But once again, family, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Hit that notification bell. You're watching LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black Empowerment Initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage for always betting on Black in conjunction with Beacon Network, the Pan African social media extraordinaire, and the home of African Centered News and Information. And we're discussing, of course, a question that was asked of me on a previous live, and that is why I became an atheist. So, as I stated before, earlier in the broadcast, I do not see the utility in believing in God or practicing religion. So you could tap in, you could agree, you can disagree, you can have a conversation, you can ask questions, but I would love to hear from you all. So, Brother LMA, that you're in queue, you could turn your camera off, and I'm hoping that you're not having any technical difficulties, and then we could jump straight into a conversation. So your camera is on. You could turn your camera off. You could turn your camera off. Okay, and you're out. So you are having technical difficulties once again. So, of course, we will stand by, and we hope that you're able to have those issues resolved, and we could get you back here in queue, and then, of course, part of the live. Shout out to Brother LMA who dribbles down in VA. Absolutely. So, Mr. Sandman, does that answer your question? Mr. K, does that answer your question? Definitely want to hear from you all. Once again, as I stated before, this is not an issue I typically publicly speak of, right? The person has to come to me and then, of course, ask questions in order for me to talk about it. I typically am very private, of course, in terms of my perspective or views on religion, particularly when it comes to being an atheist. But I'm not private on my perspective when it comes to anti-blackness and religion. But LMA, go right ahead. Go right ahead, brother. You're muted. You can unmute yourself. Okay.
Can you hear me, Dr. Lumumba?
Yes, sir. I can hear you just fine.
Hey, man. Yeah, man. Great topic. Yeah, I was wondering, are you seeing? I'm definitely seeing just more in society of uptick in Black atheists or Black non-believers. Are you seeing that across? I mean, in real life, online, are you seeing the uptick?
I don't know if I can. Dubs, if you could turn your camera on and cue just so I can make sure you're not trolling, and then you can turn it off. I just need you to turn your camera on and cue so I can make sure you're not trolling. Then, of course, I will bring you into the live. I need to be able to see your face. I got to see your face. I can't see you. Okay, very good. Very good. I don't know. At one point I saw that there were a number of posts arguing that a lot of our people were returning to African religions, right? Which of course I'm a fan of. But there could be a large amount of a growing number of Black people who have become atheists. I wouldn't use the term non-believers because that's still centering the Abrahamic faiths. But I would just argue, I would just use the term Black atheists.
Yeah. I mean, I was just trying to be inclusive for people who consider themselves non-believers. To me, there's atheists and I guess agnostic, some type of like deist light in a sense. I mean, I guess is atheist, agnostic, and then like deist light, and then your regular old run-of-the-mill.
And the reason why I make that argument, because when we look at traditional African religions, so when we juxtapose traditional African religions and Abrahamic faiths, in Abrahamic faiths, non-believers are punished. In traditional African religions, non-believers aren't punished. I mean, there's not even the concept of someone being a non-believer. You see what I'm saying here? So that's why I made that claim. I'm not trying to, of course, shut you down in any way, shape, or form, brother. You're a great contributor, and I always love having you on the show. But it's just my personal values, particularly due to the long and virulent history of anti-Black racism in those religions. I don't like to center them in any way, shape, or form. And it's my personal belief that I'm using the bully pulpit right now that we shouldn't give credibility to anything that's not credible.
True. Yeah.
Brother Dubs.
Yeah, hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing good. Speaking on like atheism, how I became atheist was because I looked at like a lot of religions, and I looked at God itself, and for me, I was like, God is like mysterious when you think about it. You either talking about something natural, your own intuition, or by and large something mysterious, man. And it doesn't really.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It doesn't really benefit one to look to believe in God. In all honesty, you know what I'm saying. So when you like just it really doesn't make sense. It's mysterious.
Well, I would argue that the concept of God being mysterious may be something that derives from Christianity or Islam and Judaism. And the reason I say that is we tend to find there's some practicality, right? So when we talk about, if I remember correctly, the Yoruba faith, Shango is considered the god of thunder in the Yoruba faith. We're only familiar with Thor. Many people argue that's a European version of the god of thunder. But in the Yoruba faith, Shango was an actual person that was able to become a deity, right? And so I just argue that you can make an argument that in some African religions, that there isn't any mysticism or mystery there. That's all. So, but let me read this comment very quickly, then we get back to you, the Dubs. Kevin, aka Mr. K, my issue is how folks use their faith in God as an excuse to be prejudiced and bigoted against foreign cultures they don't understand. Yes, we do find that taking place, but that's actually a part of Abrahamic faith. There is a belief in bigotry. That is part of the foundational values and tenets of Abrahamic religions. That if someone doesn't believe in what you believe, then you have a right to discriminate against them. This is all throughout the Old Testament, even we even find it in the New Testament, right? So that's not a good thing, but the reality of the situation is when people are doing that, they're actually aligned, they're actually following the foundation of the faith. I believe, let's see, Mr. Sandman, I believe that everything happens for a reason. Therefore, man came to believe in God for a reason. Got you. Okay, Mr. Dubs, go right ahead.
Well, I think God is a concept.
Okay.
And I think sometimes you look at God, like it sounds very left field, but if you like, you are God. Really, if you look at it, my concept of it is that. So to me, man, I just, God is. I think it's a destructive concept when it's like Abrahamic, when it's like God doing things, and then a lot of people say God told me to do it. It was
Right.
you. It was your intuition. It wasn't God
Yeah.
didn't tell you to do anything.
Yeah, I always tell people if a voice is telling you to do something, you need to see a psychiatrist and wear one of those shirts where you have to hug yourself.
Pretty much, yeah.
Literally, if a voice is telling you to do, you need to be in there like this.
But you know what's so funny about that? To think about what was the one story? Isaac and his was the father Isaac? No, father was
Abraham
Isaac and
Isaac.
Abraham and Isaac. And you mean to tell me this man hears voices in his head to kill his son, takes him into the woods, and the son is scared,
Up on the mountain,
and then
took him up on the mountain.
Took him on the mountain, excuse me. And people look at it like, oh, he had so much faith. I'm like, well, dude, are you fucking crazy? Like, if I hear voices in my head to kill my son, like I am calling the police on myself. Like I'm not going to hear voices in my head telling me to murder my own child.
Yeah,
and people just think that. Yeah, like there's a lot of
I always tell people here's part of the story that they never mention.
Mm-hmm.
Who in the French toast would want a father like that?
Exactly. Think about Job.
We know that one of the core tenets of course, Abrahamic religions is blind obedience.
Yeah,
that's just the reality. But yeah, who in the French? I said I wouldn't kill my son because a voice told me to. I don't care. It's not going to happen. But once again, who in the French toast would want a father like that?
I think, but for myself, I kind of have like three pillars in which my anti-theist kind of stands on, for like, especially when it comes to the Abrahamic three, is one, is not true. I don't believe it's true. I don't believe that it's moral. And like you said, I don't think it has any utility for us. I don't think that the world was created in 7 days. I don't think that the first two humans were Adam and Eve, and that she ate an apple and then gave it to Adam, and then now all of a sudden that's why women have menstrual pains. That's just ridiculous. Like the idea, what did John Henrik Clarke call it? Male chauvinist murder cults. Yeah, that the idea. I mean, only a man could come up with the idea that a woman came from his ribs. Yeah, that is the most. I mean, you have to think about how nonsensical that is. That a woman, not a man, was birthed by a woman, but a woman came from a man's ribs. You have to. I mean, come on, bro. Like, this place have left the plane of reality a long time ago, and it can only be, and I'm gonna bite the style of another online YouTube content creator. Goes by the name of Black Atheist Rants. I mean, he has a interesting show, but he talks about it. But even for us, you got the question of slavery and colonization and Jim Crow has to come up, right? At some point, there must be some type of cognitive dissonance that your God would allow your people to go through pretty much, genocide, ethnic cleansing, crimes against humanity by other Christians and other Arabs. We gotta give them some love too, So we were enslaved by the Muslims. There was a trans-Saharan slave trade by the Arab version of the Abrahamic faith, and then we were enslaved by the Christian wing of the Abrahamic faith, and yet those two religions are the biggest religions in the African, and as a part of the African diaspora. And I think that we got to ask the question, like, what type of God would allow that to happen to you twice by two of his children, two of his wayward children?
Right.
But somehow God loves you. I think we got to ask
Here's
some
the
serious
thing.
questions.
But Abrahamic religions were imperialistic in nature.
Absolutely.
That's just the reality.
Yeah.
So, and like I said, if you are a non-believer, then bigotry is justified.
Yep. Bigotry, slavery.
I mean, that is an actual foundation. Those are foundational tenets of the religion. Right. But here's the other thing. You mentioned the whole concept of the world being created in 7 days, 6 days, 7 days, whatever. There's a great book that talks about this. It's titled Bible Myths and its Parallels in other religions.
Oh, yeah.
I think you all should check that out, right? So, what we find is a lot of these concepts, even in the Bible, derive from other religions.
Oh, yeah. I mean, because
So
you got to realize, you got to realize that in that region, back in when the Israel, well, not Israel, but the Hebrews, they were a nomadic tribe, and there was a lot of different ethnic groups in that region. Each ethnic group had their own what's what I'm looking for, deity that they believed in. And, as you're close to these people and you interact with these people, some of their beliefs are going to rub off on you, because these stories are just ubiquitous throughout the region. And then as you get colonized, you get conquered by one, either the conquering tribe, the conquering
ethnic group,
the conquering ethnic group imposes their religion onto you, or they appropriate your religion and then twist your religion into theirs. It happened, and I guess when people don't understand that fact, they think that, when they say my God is the one true God, and I guess that makes sense, right? It being imperialistic in nature, that, because you had other cultures that were polytheistic and they had multiple gods or whatever. So it was nothing for them, because if you're polytheistic, there's nothing to say that there can't be another God, right? If I already believe in multiple gods, like I say, I believe in 7 gods, and then there's a group over there, they believe in their own God, so there's 8. You know what I'm saying? It's nothing for me to believe that in 9 if I already believe in 8. I can believe that these are my gods, and then those people have their gods, and there could be.
But here's the thing: Abrahamic religions do not have a monopoly on the concept of monotheism. For example, we know that the reality situation is monotheism predates Abrahamic faiths. Particularly, we look at Akhenaten in ancient Egypt. Grasso, I see you in Q. No, this is an African conversation, African only. So appreciate you wanting to tap in, but it's not going to happen. Yeah, there was a Mzungu in the queue that wanted to come in, so it wasn't going to let that happen.
He's going to tell us about the God, I guess. I don't know. I don't want to put that on. I don't know what this person was going to say.
We don't know what the situation was, but we've had people come in before and they try to be disruptive and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
but the point I was making was that, you have there are other cultures and ethnic groups that do have a monotheistic, but when you have one group that says my God is the one true God, it almost feels like they're trying to emphasize it to kind of, what's what I'm looking for? Like to overemphasize that, I'm the top dog in here. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So,
I think funny. That's a great point. And Mr. K just brought that up. He said, he thinks that part of this is being done because there is a focus of trying to cover up their insecurities when they can't prove their own theology is true. So technically, the Bible doesn't say that women were created from man. It says Eve was created from Adam's rib. So that means that the woman was created from a man. It's just a reality situation. So we don't have to,
even if it's just one,
muddy the waters.
Yeah, even if it's just one woman that was created from one man's rib, the idea that a woman can come from a man.
Right.
Despite,
it's nonsensical. We know how science and nature works, biology works. So absolutely. Mr. Dubs, any thoughts?
I always thought about that. I think if it was all these gods, it would only have to be one God if God was real. So, and that's based on, because it's the God is a concept. And what I find interesting about African people, man, we worship other people's gods. I think the Allah God is Islam. That's an Arab God.
Yeah.
I think it just comes down to that. And the biblical God, you got to say, of the Bible is the European God, I would say.
Well, no, it's Jewish.
Well, no, the
Jewish.
Jewish God, yeah.
Jewish
But
God,
but
Eurasian. So
actually,
it's yeah,
well, I was
Jewish
gonna say
God, but nonetheless, it's a non-African God.
Yes, yeah,
So
and
exactly.
that's the point you're making. Absolutely, yeah.
that's for sure, man. And I think like see what we doing is we worshiping these gods and these religions that's not African. And I think these are the issues.
Yeah, I would agree 100% wholeheartedly. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
But like I said, I think when because religion, once you own, like you run the institution that runs the religion, you have so much power that you can just sway, thousands of people. I was looking at a video where they're talking about the Crusades or whatever. You had people that didn't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of, but yet on the Pope's word, they were willing to go and throw their lives away to reconquer land in the name of the church. Obviously the Crusades, there was a lot of politics going on in the Crusades, but the one thing I noticed was that, like I said, if you're the head of an institution that is in control of a man's religion, you can get that man to do not anything but damn near anything, and that's a lot of power to get rid of. So it makes sense why these religions still persist, even though I think science should have disproven a lot of this stuff, should have discredited a lot of these religions. But like I said, it's a lot of power, and kind of to like what you were saying, that religions. I was there's another woman online. She's a atheist. Her name is, I think it's Britt Harley, and she was I think she's a atheist, but I think she was a Mormon, and then she ended up going to seminary school, and then once she realized in seminary school she realized none of this makes sense. So she ended up becoming a atheist. But one of her videos, she was talking about like almost like the psychological role that religions play. Like, and I'm going to
Mhm.
butcher this, but it's like we have 4 fundamental fears. I can't remember. I need to go back and watch that video so I can remember what she said. But it's like the fear of death, the fear of isolation, the fear of meaninglessness, and the fear of freedom, in a sense, the fear of being accountable for your actions. And while you can get, hobbies and institutions and families that can, alleviate the fear of each one of these 4 individually, religion is one that can alleviate all 4 at the same time. So basically it can alleviate your fear of death because it promises you afterlife. um Isolation, because you can have tenants and you can have community around the religion, so that kind of gives you community, so it gets rid of that fear of isolation. Meaninglessness, you can have your religion has tenets and what you're supposed to do in the eyes of God, and God has his commandments, so that gives you meaninglessness. And then in terms of accountability, I don't have to be accountable to anybody because God is in control and God controls everything, so I don't have to be accountable. It was the spirit that did it, and I'm probably butchering. I'm probably ad-libbing a bit of it, but the point that she was making was that religions, particularly, they provide these types of social and psychological functions that really just reinforce themselves, and that's like the main reason why they came about. Because, like I said, when you're a prehistoric man roaming around the savannah, you hear earthquake. You don't understand an earthquake. You don't understand plate tectonics. You see a shooting star. You don't understand astrology and celestial planetary bodies and stuff like that. You don't understand that. You don't understand when you see the first time you may see a what's it called? Which one's the one when the moon goes in front of the sun? Is that a solar eclipse?
Eclipse, yeah.
Yeah, solar eclipse.
Lunar eclipse, one of the
Yeah.
but it's an eclipse.
Yeah, basically, but they're so infrequent, right? So we can, I can imagine prehistoric human understanding the phases of the moon, right? Because it happens once, once it is a cycle of whether 2 weeks or a week or so is a cycle, so they can understand that. But imagine the first time, you go through a a solar eclipse where, no one, could they pop up, once every 100 years, 200 years, they may pop in 20, whatever. They're erratic. So imagine it's daylight and then all of a sudden it goes night completely night for, 10 minutes and then it's sunlight again. That will mess anybody up, right? This is your first time seeing it. If your parents never told you about it, your great grandparents never told you about it, and then everyone witnesses this at the same time. Yeah, I mean, and they don't understand what's going on. Yeah, it's going to be all types of theories as to what it is, and obviously they don't have the technology that we have now. So of course, they're going to come up with wild and explanations that are that can't obviously aren't true, but for giving them the benefit of the doubt, they don't have the means to be able to investigate it. They come up with fairy tales and mythology.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
Any word from you, Brother Dubs?
Good point. So I concur with what he said.
Understood. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like I said, for me, it's the lack of utility for me that led me to say, hey, you know what, I'm an atheist. I just don't see any utility in this. And this is something that, golly, who's the brother who wrote that book on Malcolm X, Life of Reinvention? Let me see if I can bring up his name. Yeah, he's from my hometown, Dayton, Ohio. Malcolm X. Life. Manny Marable. He wrote a book on, I think, Black leadership, and he talked about in his book that the more education that Black people receive, the less religious they became.
Yeah, I can see that.
So we tend to find, like, it just kind of speaks to your point. You begin to realize how the world actually works. It is not rooted in spookism.
That's a very good point you made. You actually look at it. You look at any powerful people or nation in the world, they're not caught up on religion.
Yeah.
The weakest people, I don't want to say weakest, but the people who do the worst, they caught up in religion, man, which is in God and all of this. Like, God is just like, man, to me, all that stuff is really that get in the way of progress. And then like people, you want to pray and stuff, pray to God. I think it's I think praying is a form of can't even think of the word. I lost my track of mine.
No, but yeah,
it's a form of meditation is what I was looking for. But I think like praying about that's a waste of time.
Yeah. But also you got to add that you're praying to the same God of the people who are trying to oppress you.
That enslaved you. You pray to your God of your oppressor, to your enslaver, your genocider, your enemy.
Yeah.
How'd that go?
Yeah.
Like even in like Islam, they say Allah. That's the Arabic word for God. And Allah, the Allah God only comprehends Arabic. Like no lie, they have to do their 5 daily prayers in Arabic. It's recommended to do it in Arabic. That's utterly ridiculous.
Yeah. But that goes to the point that most gods, even the word God is, most gods or deities is basically the deification of one people's culture. Right. So if you have, Allah or, and for the Arabs and Muslim, of course it's going to speak, you got to speak Arabic because it was created by Arab God. So of course, it's going to be Arab centric, and then, like I said, the for the Jews, their God is going to be Jew centric. That's why I say God's chosen people, which is, why would you, excuse me, why would you as an African or African descendant, African diaspora, pray to the God of another group of people? Saying this God that you are, believe in chose another people as his chosen people. And then I'm going to come up behind them and be God. Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, why would I choose a God?
It does make sense. It's rooted in bigotry, but it speaks to the bigotry.
No. I said, why would we pray to a God whose chosen people is another group of people?
Yeah. Well, for us, like as you stated earlier in the show, I'm sorry to regurgitate something you said. It's nonsensical, right? Yeah. But once again, this is part of the brainwashing that takes place, right? So when we talk about racism, there's also a psychological aspect to it as well. So there's a brainwashing that takes place, and something that we have to be cognizant of. This is something I made sure I taught to my children as soon as they were able to comprehend. Literally, when they could comprehend, I broke these things down to them.
Yeah.
Right. And so
Yeah.
I remember telling my children about the story of Jesus, and my son was like, "What? People actually believe in that?" They were like, "What? He died and came back to life and flew up to heaven? He ain't Superman." I was like, "Yeah, I know, but it's what people believe." Right. Had these conversations with my daughter as well. I remember there's a time when my daughter's mom, she was going through some issues. This is probably maybe 9, 10 years ago. I don't know exactly what the issues were, but she called me and was like, I was like, "I think you need to see a therapist. You need to see a professional clinician, right? I was in a relationship with you. You need to get some real help, licensed help, professional help." And she's like, "Well, I've been reading the Bible." And I said, "Well, that's not going to help you." I said, "That's going to make the problem worse." I told her that.
Yeah. That's so funny.
I could tell you why. I said the Bible was a site of anti-Black racism. The site is about violent sexism, pedophilia, incest. I said it's promoting miseducation. It's promoting misinformation. All right, this part of this is supposed to end what? Getting people to what? Actually dumb themselves down and be anti-critical, anti-intellectual. I say this will actually cause more problems for you. Yeah, but once again, due to socialization, due to the brainwashing, we are susceptible to this from the moment we come out of our mother's womb.
Yep.
Right? So I said, listen, for example, my parents, their next door neighbor came by, and I was, in the house when they was talking. This lady was telling me I'm dealing with some issues with my brother-in-law. Why is God putting me through this? And I didn't jump into the conversation. I came over, I was cutting the grass or whatever. But I wanted to say this has nothing to do with God putting you through something. This is called the vagaries and vicissitudes of life.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right? You married a man who has a brother who's a piece of S.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's just how things go. It has nothing to do with there's something you did to cause this.
Yeah.
It's called life. Life is life, and as the young people say. But once again, this focus on this simplistic understanding of the world and how it works, being anti-critical, anti-intellectual, right, causes a number of problems because it puts people in a position where they're easy to be manipulated.
And that's what I'm talking about, the fear of accountability.
Yeah. So, it's one of those things. And like I said, I'm not someone who tries to disabuse people their religious beliefs. But when they come to me, I do say, listen, if you want to have this conversation, you're not going to like how it's going to go, because I'm quite sure I know more about your religion than you do.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm going to be flying over your head like I'm Dr. J in this mofo. You know what I'm saying? But and that's my issue. I say, don't come to me with this and you aren't aware of the history.
Yeah.
Right. We're going to have a problem. And we know that this is a real issue for people. When people talk about the Catholic Church, I said, well, there was nothing but the Catholic Church until Martin Luther's Protestant Reformation in the 16th century.
Yeah, try to separate themselves from the Catholics.
Right? I mean, that's all it was. Yeah. It was just Catholic Church everywhere.
Yeah.
And then as part of the Protestant Reformation, you begin to find there were different denominations of Christianity that sprang up. And these denominations were based on what? A person had an issue with this particular denomination, so they went and created their own.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then I said, when I'm talking about Martin Luther, I'm not talking about the civil rights activist. I'm talking about the theologian. Lord have mercy. Right? Have no idea about these things whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, this is the actual word of God. I said, no, it's not. This book was collated, codified, and curated by Europeans at the Council of Nicaea in 325. These are historical facts. This is not conjecture. This isn't speculation. This is actual history, world history. So when you come at me like that, I become offended. Some people argue that sometimes I could be a bit aggressive, right? Because now I know that you're trying to dupe me. You're insulting my intelligence. Yeah. But I think I told you all the story when I was in Ghana, getting married, handling my BI. You know what I mean? And my wife said, "Listen, I got an uncle. He always be on He's a missionary and all this stuff." I said, "Look, that's cool. Just tell him to leave him alone, right?" He comes up in the middle of the ceremony, and she's looking at me, smiling, holding my hand, squeezing my hand because she don't want me to, spaz out. And he's like, "Dr. Lumumba, I want you to come over here, get on your knees, put your hands up." I said, "I'm not doing that." And repeat after me. I said, "I'm not doing that." I said, "I don't know you from a bag of white rice."
That's funny.
Right. So I said that I'm not a child. I said, so what you can do is you can say what you want to say, sit
Mhm.
back down, and we're going to continue the ceremony.
Yeah.
Yeah, but once again, we're talking about putting people in a cherubic, very childlike disposition,
Yeah.
childlike state. Here's the other issue, right? We tend to find that the focus is on what's saving people's souls,
Yeah.
right? Not addressing the material conditions, not
Yeah.
addressing the actual social ills that we face as a result of living under a system of anti-black racism. I brought this up when I was an undergraduate student. Even though I was a Black Studies and Sociology major, I joined the African American or whatever it was on campus. And so we're having a conversation, and the president said, "Hey, brother, no, we're going to go to the Children's Hospital here in Dayton, and we're going to read the children who are suffering from health issues, illness, physical illness." And I said, "Well, how about we go to the PJs and read the children who are suffering from social ills?"
Mm-hmm.
I said, listen, we need to be serious, not just doing something that's PC, right? They're like, "Man, you really think different." I said, "I know. I told you, I'm him, not them." So this is Hebron the Don. Man, Dr. Bakari, I've been looking for your channel for months. I remember you looking into the works and perspective of Dr. C.S.I. Johnson. I'm glad I found this. I'm locked in. Appreciate you, brother. Hopefully you can subscribe and make sure you hit the thumbs up and the notification bell. Definitely appreciate you tapping in, being part of the conversation, being a subscriber. Once again, you're watching LumumbaSpeaks.com in conjunction. Make sure you hit the thumbs up. We get some feedback. Notification bell. Definitely appreciate you tapping in, being part of the conversation. Yeah, that's LMA. We got some feedback. I think you're gonna have to make sure you got YouTube turned off in the background. But so these are issues that I tend to find are extremely problematic. This is of course a critique of religion, but the crux of why I became an atheist is I just don't see the utility in it. But if I were to practice a religion, I think I shared this on a numerable amount of times, it would be what? An African religion, right? And it probably would be voodoo, Badoom, right? You saw what happened down in Haiti, you know what I'm saying? Shake it up, let's make it happen. You know what I mean? But that's my perspective. Of course, I will open the floor. Brother Hebron the Don, if you want, the link is in the description. The link is in the chat. You can tap in, be part of the conversation. We'd love to hear from you. A new subscriber, I presume. We'd love to hear from you regarding this conversation. Once again, just to reiterate, I decided to do a show on this because this was a question that was asked to me on a previous live. And so as a result, I said, okay, we could do a show about it. Give me some content, right? Still some content. So this is why we're having a conversation. But once again, you're more than free to tap in. Appreciate you. Brother LMA and Brother Dubs, the floor is yours.
Well, I'm a Pan-African atheist, but I like the I tap into the Nation of Islam with certain things, of course, not with everything, but certain things. They say God is a mystery, although they believe in the Bible and the Quran, which is interesting. But they say that. Then I'm also very much in tune with the Nation of Gods and Earths.
Like 5%ers and the hood is
5%ers, that's for sure.
Because all of us turn to sinners. Yeah. Some of us are chilling in San Quentin, and others like myself are trying to carry on tradition. Shout out to AZ. That comes from album,
for sure.
Life's a Bitch, and then you die. That's why we get high. Yeah.
That's for sure.
Daily,
like a lot of them.
94. That album dropped in April of 94. That was 32 years ago.
That's for sure. Wu-Tang, Brand Nubian.
Mm-hmm.
Rakim original rap name was Rakim Allah.
Yeah, Rakim Allah. Thinking of a man.
Big Daddy. Yeah. The Big Daddy Kane. A lot. 5% got a good town hip hop. That's for sure, man. So
Rakim is nice. He said, what he say? He said, you ain't gotta throw 20 down. You ain't gotta spend 20 down to show. He said you don't have to spend 20 down to get honey down. Take it out, still a heart, no money down. But it got bars, man. For he got bars. Yeah.
Yes, I tap into them. They don't believe in God. Although they got Islamic things within they like I said, Allah, which is take that for what it is. But I tap into them, but man, I just think that God concept is destructive, man. Then it's always a secondary character. It's like, so people do think, they say, oh, why did God do that? Or I hate what God keep, that's just something that happened. Like, somebody got drunk and killed somebody in a car accident, I think it's unfortunate, but that person made a decision to drink. That's got nothing to do
Right.
with no God.
Yeah. We tend to find that's very common for individuals to try to explain. And this is what we tend to find. If someone can't or doesn't understand something, they just say it's
It's
God.
God.
You still don't
It's like
understand
they
it.
say God of the gaps theory.
Yeah. And
God of the
there's a
gaps.
good
Yep.
friend of mine.
Yep.
Yes, good friend of mine. He's a preacher. He's from Michigan, but he's a good brother, even though he's from Michigan, right? But he told me, he said, "Well, what's really going on here, brother, is it's called God of the gaps." And he told me, he said, "Yeah, if somebody doesn't have a particular, if there's a gap in someone's knowledge about something, then they would just put God in it." That's the exact term we use, God of the gaps. Yeah.
Yeah, man, that's just an explanation for something you can't really, explain. They say like that's used with a lot of things, and I think that's actually destructive. Like some
Yeah,
things
very
you
much.
just got to just tell it what it is, man. If you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah,
Like it's
absolutely.
sometimes, man, it come down to really, to be honest, you just simply lying. That's why I
Oh yeah,
think sometimes religion is really like child abuse for real. I've heard people say that. Yeah, it
you
is
yeah,
though, because
Dalo Kenyatta always says that
yeah,
teaching
man,
a
because
child
you
religion
telling
is
somebody the
teaching
wrong
a child.
thing.
Yeah,
Just
and
like it's false.
and I could give you an example of course, somebody making a claim that is, of course, adverse to facts or they're lying, is absolutely false, ahistorical in nature. Was there was a preacher talking about gospel music, black preacher. He said, gospel music was created by God, and I said, well, that's not true. I said gospel music, particularly black gospel music, is a derivative of the Chicago Renaissance. Many of us are aware of the Harlem Renaissance, but this comes out of the Chicago Renaissance. And of course, gospel music is of course, amalgamation of secular and blues music. And it gets quiet. Yeah. How do I know this? I had to take a class on African American music in my bachelor degree program in African American studies.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we had to go over the history of African American music from the beginning till today, right? And so I just said, you're making a claim that once again, it's just 100% adverse to facts, but you're able to get away with this because people see you as a man of authority because you say you are a man of God. But I know that you're nothing more than a charlatan when you're saying things that aren't true. That's in his thing. You know what you're saying isn't true because you either know that you don't know what you're talking about or you're trying to mislead people. So either way, I said we have a problem here. Yeah. And of course, as you can imagine, that person never spoke to me again. Yeah. But this is something that's very common. But the Dubs is 100% on point. Typically, these are individuals who, matter of fact, I even told my children, I said, someone comes to you and they're telling you they want to talk to you about God, they want to spiritually mentor you. I said they have nefarious intentions. I told them that from jump. They have nefarious intentions, and they either want access to your body or to your money. That's just the reality.
I agree. And no, you better look at a believer, a religion, man. When you bring up things that's false in it, they perpetually play and shift and jump around, and it's like that's nonsense, man. When you read the Bible for real, it's really comical,
Yeah.
to be honest. When you read a lot of the things that's in it and believe it is true, so it's absurdity.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And God is evil in the Bible. He killing him all around the place in the Bible, man.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
We want to worship a God like that. He get jealous. He say Esau hated. He hate people. What type of God is that?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Brother LMA.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, what was the prompt again? Sorry, I had having more difficulties.
No, it's quite all right. No, the brother. Well, see that's God, and you know that you about to be part of this conversation.
Exactly. I've offended the gods. I don't know which one, but one of them guys up there was not pleased with me because I was talking trash.
Yeah.
But like I said, a lot of it is, and I do think that, particularly now, I think that society is ripe or is ready to kind of reconsider this God, and I hope that, for me, I don't believe in any supernatural beings. I don't believe in any woo, nothing like that. And I think that's just like the best way to do it. Kind of like what was saying, is best to just say you don't know if you don't know, and just seek knowledge. And it's kind of sad that we live in an era where we know where lightning comes from. We know where the sun goes at night. We know why people get sick and how to, either cure their illness or to alleviate their illness. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. We know how to, be able to, if I was to show, this, I'm talking on my phone right now, but if I was to show this device to someone who was, a 30-year-old man in, 700, CE in, the African savannah, and through this phone, you could talk to somebody literally on the other side of the planet instantaneously. And, like we have the technology, like we're literally living in what our forefathers and foremothers could not even conceive of. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And we still got people trying to believing in, Canaanite mythology. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of a sad state of affairs, but I'm thinking that a lot more people, because and honestly, the religious folks have messed up. Like I think a lot of people are realizing that religious people, are a big cause of all of the strife that we see today. And that was one of the things that kind of drove me away from, that first pillar that fell for me when it came to becoming an atheist. It's just like, I'm looking at the world. I'm like, this world is so fucked up. Like I keep seeing all these Christians in charge of everything, and they believe in God, and they're the guys supposed to be the gods, have a conduit between them and the Almighty. And yeah, I'm looking around, you go to the hood, you see a church on every block, but then every block is, run down and disheveled and beat. I'm just like, so what is this God doing for us? Like, I don't understand how this God operates if he can't even keep your uncle off of drugs. He can help you find your keys now. Don't get me wrong. Like if you're running late and you lost your keys, he can help you find your keys to your car, but he can't help, the little homie down the street that can't eat. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Homie, getting caught up in drug gangs. You know what I'm saying? God can't do that, but God can give your pastor a new Benz. Like, come on, bro, something's not right. Something is afoot here. Either your God doesn't like black people or doesn't like you in general, or you're being lied to. And this is just a international, intergenerational lie that you just, been forced on you. And and it's sad too, because a lot of people who I kind of like yourself, my dad is, whatever, but not whatever in the sense that my dad is around, but I don't think he really has I think he's just a non-denominational. I don't think he gives it that much thought. But my mom is very religious, and it kind of sucks because it's just like, you don't want to, how can I put it? My parents are kind of like in their golden years, and I don't want to, I don't know. But it's just like, I have people that I love, and it's just like, they are highly religious, and, I feel like we don't have that in common. You know what I'm saying? I still love you. I still care for you. But this thing that you believe is nonsense, and I'm not going to follow it. I'm not going to follow along with you, because this is just nonsense. It's destructive. Not only that, I think it has no utility. I think it's destructive. It is destructive for the mind. It is destructive for the mind to believe that the world was created in 6 days, when you have unbelievable scientific evidence and experiments that show the opposite. It is, I think it harms your critical thinking skills to think that, not saying that all Christians believe this, but there are some that believe that the transatlantic slave trade was justifiable because it introduced Africans to Christianity. That is a sickness. That is destructive.
Yes, that was one of the justifications that were created by Europeans. That was one of the reasons created by Europeans to justify the enslavement of African people. Yes. Yeah,
and this is written down. This is a papal bull. Was it a Romanus Pontifex?
Yes,
and
the papal bull. Yes.
Yeah, the papal bull. This was like, it don't get no higher than the Pope. You know what I'm saying? You can, it's one thing if your pastor at the Fifth Street Tabernacle Church on Broadway says it. It's another thing when the Pope says it.
And in fact, what we tend to find is we now have Black people parroting such a narrative. In fact, I can
Yeah.
recall vividly when I visited Central Florida to meet Brother Dwayne, who, of course, is the resident historian here at Big Kalon Network and Lumumba Speaks, where the pastor even made statements that were analogous to that. Then I even recall, even when I was an undergrad, we were in the Black Culture Center, the Bilingual Black Culture Center, the earliest Black Culture Centers created at predominantly white institutions in higher education. It was created, I believe, in 1971. And there's a sister there. We're having a conversation like we always do. And she says, well, my grandmother told me that one of the good things about slavery is that they introduced us to God. And I just blew up on her. I mean, I just went off and I said, your grandmother is not an elder. She's an old person and she's an idiot. I said, African people already believed in God before we were enslaved by Europeans. And in fact, the concept of God comes out of ancient Egypt, out of Kemet, out of Africa. And I mean, I just went in and she just got quiet. I said, but this is an example of what elders or old people in our community parroting white supremacist viewpoints and perspectives to, of course, young people. And this comes out of this practice of being anti-critical. Yeah.
And like I said, you said it's not useful. I said it is the opposite of useful. It's not that it's not useful. It is the opposite of useful.
Yeah, you said it's destructive.
It's destructive. It destroys your mind. While I think some people have what they can silence that cognitive dissonance, and they can just kind of and for me, like 99% of the people that I run across, I believe that they don't believe this stuff. I think it's just it's part of the cultural zeitgeist. It's just something that you just, you were indoctrinated in it and you just kind of live it out. But, if it was, and it's kind of like, it only comes in fear. And there's, people always say, what is it? There are no atheists in the foxholes, right?
Well, that's basically not true. I've been in a foxhole.
Well, no, but you heard the saying though, right?
Yeah, I've heard the saying.
But the saying is, when you are in fear for your life, you're going to cry out to God. Basically, fear, right? Okay, well, if you have a plane, and do you want that plane to be flown by a skilled atheist pilot or your pastor who just prayed before he hopped in the cockpit? Which one would you choose?
I would prefer your atheist pilot.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm getting at is that we have all this technology and people are still holding on to these Bronze Age Canaanite myths. Was it Yahweh is a Canaanite storm deity? That was like so it's just like, people still hold on to it, and I get it, but at the same time, it's just like, bro, this shit's gonna lead you to your destruction. Like, like people, I find it funny, like, what did John Henry Clark say? He said that we out Pope the Pope, out Muhammad, and it's so funny to me when I see like these, white Christian nationalists, like, in MAGA, I'm like, to me, that's like true Christianity. Like, if you ain't willing to take it there, then miss me with all of the prosperity preacher. And then, because most people, they try to mold God into like, obviously what he is not. Like, you see like, gay, I was finding it funny, like people who are gay and they're in a church. And I'm like, bro, it is obvious what God says about homosexuality. Like, there's no ambiguity about that. You know what I'm saying? But people will twist it and say like, oh, well, I'm not going to judge. Only God can judge. I'm like, but even still, your religion is very clear on how he feels about it, And so I don't know. I just think it is destructive. But my point was that what we see now is what people are trying to turn America into a theology, a Christian nationalist theology. Theocracy. And thank you, theocracy. And for me, I'm like, the Christians, y'all shouldn't be objecting. The Black Christians, y'all shouldn't be objecting to this, right? Is he's returning America to God, but yet a lot of these Black Christians, they are hot under the collar because they know that what comes along with it. So I'm like, okay, either you're Christian or you're not. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Either you believe that this country should be ran under the auspices of a church or not. And so if it's not, then like, put it this way, you and I are Pan-Africans. Right. If a Pan-African got up in there, he said, I'm going to turn this country to a Pan-African nation. we're not going to sit up there and be like, oh, but we have to have a separation between Pan-African and state. We're not going to say that. You know what I'm saying? But the Christians got to have a separation of church and state because they know how destructive their church can be.
Mm-hmm.
They know. Absolutely. And yet and they're trying to, I don't know. But yeah, I'm hogging up the time. I can talk about this forever.
Yes, quite all right. Brother Don says, for me, it would be Candomblé. Please forgive me. I'm going to butcher it because I'm a capitalist. But if not that, need proof for it to be of any utility to me in the global African. Overstood there. Are you Brazilian, brother, by chance? We know capoeira comes out of Brazil. So just asking the question there. I just want to know if you're a Brazilian. If not, either or, anyway, we're glad that you're here. Always bet on black. Happy Pan-African Thursday. Final thoughts, Brother Dubs, before we close out.
Final thoughts, man. I think I don't know, man. I think if things are outdated, man, they need to be put away to the side and be done with, man. The first pillows are made of stone. I don't really. That's true. So you could so that's just to say, man, something outdated. If you was doing something at first, that don't mean you got to keep doing it, man. If it's outdated, it's outdated. Right. And that's like with a lot of things. So I actually don't mind the God concept sometimes if it need to be personal to you and it need to be make some sense, man. You know. So that's what I would say. But to me, man, like for real, for being honest, it really need to just die. Some, God and religion and all of that. So I would say that.
Overstood. All right, family. Well, you all know what to do. Until next time, always bet on black. Peace. Before you go, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. Thank you for supporting the channel. And remember, here at Lumumba Speaks, we always bet on black. Peace. LMA, I know you know